Vaccines are one of the great discoveries of modern medicine. They are a fundamental part of children's right to full health, and in many countries, they are mandatory. However, in recent years, there has been a surge in the debate over whether vaccines cause much more serious dangers than the fear of being injected with a syringe. So, are vaccines good or bad? Since ancient times, diseases like smallpox have wreaked havoc on humanity. In the 18th century, this disease caused a third of all cases of blindness and killed 400,000 people each year. If you got sick, you had up to a 60% chance of dying, and up to 80% if you were a child. The curious thing is that those who survived never got sick again. Around that time, Edward Jenner dedicated his life to finding a remedy for smallpox. He noticed that women who milked cows would become infected with a virus called vaccinia, a version of the smallpox virus that affected cows. These women would get sick with fever, pain, and sores on their hands, but after this infection, they became immune to smallpox. Jenner had a hunch that the infection with vaccinia provided protection against smallpox. The vaccinia virus was very similar to the smallpox virus, but its attenuated and weakened form allowed the body to generate defenses against the closely related viruses without the risk of death. Jenner decided to take a sample of the sores from one of these women and inoculated an 8-year-old boy with the vaccinia virus. The boy became sick with a fever, but he recovered after a few days. A few months later, Jenner inoculated the same boy with the human smallpox virus, and the boy did not get sick. Jenner had confirmed that the boy was now immune. His findings were later corroborated by Louis Pasteur, who named this method vaccination in honor of Jenner. Scientists around the world adopted this method, which they continuously improved. Global vaccination programs were implemented. Today, smallpox, a deadly disease that took the lives of millions of people, is considered eradicated worldwide. But how do vaccines work? The effectiveness of vaccines is related to the functioning of our immune system. The immune system protects us from diseases in two ways: the innate immune response and the adaptive immune response. The innate response is the simpler of the two and involves the body's protective barriers. Eyes produce tears, and the nose generates mucus to trap infectious agents. The skin also acts as a barrier. These barriers are not specific to any particular pathogen but offer general protection against viruses and bacteria. However, as we all know from experiencing a common cold, these mechanisms are not infallible. When we are infected by a virus that manages to bypass the innate barrier, we require the support of the adaptive immune response. In order to attack an invader, the body first needs to be able to recognize it as something foreign to the body itself. It's not about attacking our own cells. How does it accomplish this? First, it identifies the invader. Then, it trains its police force, immune cells, to recognize it. This trained police force seeks out and attacks the invader. Once the threat is neutralized, a memory is generated to ensure that if the same invader, or a very similar one, tries to enter the body again, the police will recognize it immediately and prevent it from making us sick. We can consider vaccines as a type of preventive police training. We expose the body to a weakened or dead infectious agent, so that the lymphocytes, immune cells, become trained and prepared to respond to any future attacks. That's why vaccines are the best weapon to combat infectious diseases, even more effective than antibiotics, because their effect is long-lasting. This is especially important for diseases that can be deadly and for which there is no effective treatment. Just as Jenner used vaccinia to prevent smallpox, we can prevent deadly diseases by preparing the immune system in advance. Vaccines have not only eradicated smallpox but also other deadly diseases. For instance, poliomyelitis, a devastating disease that leaves survivors paralyzed and suffering for life. The polio vaccine was developed by Jonas Salk in 1952 when this disease affected 60,000 people annually. A worldwide vaccination campaign was launched, and by 1994, polio was completely eradicated in the Western Hemisphere. Today, it only appears in regions of the East where people were not vaccinated. Similarly, vaccines have been created against tuberculosis, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, measles, rubella, and hepatitis. Together, these vaccines have saved more than 2.5 million lives. The development and widespread use of vaccines have been one of the most significant achievements in medicine, protecting individuals and entire populations from potentially deadly diseases and contributing to global public health. So, why is there now a rejection of vaccines? The propaganda against vaccines started with a deliberate fraud. In 1998, the English Dr. Andrew Wakefield published a study of 12 cases of children who had shown autism and other serious problems after receiving a specific vaccine, the combined measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. Later, it was discovered that the data in this study had been completely invented and manipulated. Why did Wakefield do it? He wasn't against vaccines, rather, he wanted to patent his new version of the combined vaccine and thought that by casting suspicion on the other vaccine, he could sell his invention more easily. But the repercussions of his study were much worse. Powerful anti-vaccine movements emerged, which continue to generate misinformation or false information against vaccines. These groups cling to ideas like Wakefield's and ignore real scientific evidence. For example, there have been hundreds of studies involving over 1 million children demonstrating that there is no association between vaccines and autism. 1 million studies versus the 12 from Wakefield's fake study. What do anti-vaxxers argue? There are parents who claim that after vaccinating their children before the age of 2, they became autistic. Vaccines did not cause this. It's simply because the signs of autism are not noticeable until children are around 2 years old, when parents expect certain behaviors that are not met. Nowadays, we know that autism can be detected with more modern methods, up to 6 months or a year before children get vaccinated. Autism is a genetic condition that develops long before the age of vaccination. Current anti-vaccine movements argue that vaccines contain certain dangerous components, such as mercury or aluminum. However, these arguments are no longer valid. In the case of mercury, it was a poorly studied mercury compound, which was removed from the majority of vaccines since 2001. As for aluminum, vaccines contain an amount less than 20 times what an average person breathes and drinks in a day. While some vaccines may present side effects, the majority of these are mild. Severe cases have been isolated incidents, as can happen with any medication. For example, in some cases, the measles vaccine can cause fever and spasms, but these symptoms only last a few days and do not have long-term effects. Before the existence of the vaccine, measles used to kill 160,000 children per year. The real danger lies in not vaccinating children. Have you thought about this? If you decide not to vaccinate your child, you are not only exposing him or her to disabling or deadly diseases but also endangering vulnerable individuals, infants who have not been vaccinated yet, people with immunodeficiency conditions, or those who have just received transplants, for instance. Plus, diseases that were believed to be eradicated are killing and maiming innocent people once again. While it is true that not all vaccines are 100% efficient and some may cause side effects, they are the best weapon we have against infectious diseases, as they save millions of lives worldwide at a really low cost. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to comment if you want us to discuss a specific topic.